Hello, Perform 360 8-week challenges. Ange from iPerformance Nutrition, and in today's video we're going to be talking about flavor science. It's really about learning all those principles that we've taken from our pantry list, through from our meal plans, and basically putting it all together to make delicious food that you can all eat every single day and actually enjoy as well at the same time. So this is in lieu of your Performance Kitchen workshop, which is coming up within your experience of being a member of the Perform 360 8-week challenge. And it's something that I want you guys to start thinking about and doing in your own kitchens. So at that session, we will actually show you practical examples of how easy this is. But before we get there, I want you guys to start experimenting with what you like at home. So basically with flavor science, we make food decisions somewhere in between pretty much what we're in the mood for and also what's available. Now, I have taught you over the time that you have been with us that there is also some other scientific sports nutrition principles that we want to be trying to achieve or hit in relation to maximal recovery. So it's important now that we start to put all these sort of things together, but it's very important that we don't forget that flavor is not just a science, but also thinking about where that stems from and where that comes from. So there are 3 dimensions to building a bit of a recipe. You have aroma, you have taste, and you also have texture. Most people think it's just about taste, but in fact, 80% of our eating experience comes from our smell. So if we aren't cooking, we're valuably missing out on the massive component that will make sure our experience more enjoyable. So the best thing that we can do is actually just get in the kitchen, plain and simple. And by doing so, we're obviously then creating food from scratch, which makes it more nutritious anyway. So taking consideration of all these things, I want to teach you guys how to then start to build meals that are appealing. So it has to start with some sort of aroma or smell first. And then of course we build meals into making them conducive to recovery and performance as well. So after which you have done your pantry list, I know you guys have an amazing pantry and fridge now in terms of your setup. We now go into saying, okay, well, how do we combine foods that give it that aroma, that give it that pleasure and give it the satisfaction that we want, all with being conducive to our portion sizes relative to our needs. So the first thing I always start with is say, well, rather than have me tell you what to eat, it's about the reverse. It's about saying, well, what do I like to eat first? And then building a meal from there. So say, for instance, you were to open up your freezer right now. I want you guys, and if you guys are at home listening to this, go in, open up your freezers or your fridges for that matter, and just have a look at what you've got in relation to protein. So we start with protein first because that's a very much a proponent of what we want to be achieving in most of our meals. So if you think about what you've got, and say for instance you've got some frozen rump steak that you've cut up, you've frozen, maybe you purchased it at the markets a few weeks ago. And so that's pretty much from an accessibility point the first thing that we should be starting with, because it's available to you, and at some point if you've bought it, then hopefully you would like to eat it. So if you say have beef in your freezer, you've taken that out. And so what we then look in terms of looking down the list is to go, okay, well, what sort of style of cooking do I want to go? Well, what goes with beef? So we could roast beef, we could put it into a curry, or we could stew it in a casserole, or we could stir fry it. So there's 3 different methods there that one might look a little bit more appealing to you, and then go with that. Now, the second thing we do is to go across to the other column now. So what we're looking at here is to say, okay, well, the next thing, remember those big rocks that we talked about with 80% of our results coming from a few of our simple 6 methods. So the second simple 6 that we're looking at is, where's my fruit or vegetable intake coming from? So once we've got our protein, we've decided on the method, then we're going to come across to the next column. And the list there is looking at what particular fruits or vegetables go well or pair well with the protein choice that you've had. So say, for instance, I'm going to do a beef stir fry. And then I look across and I go, well, I need some veggies or salad to go with that. What's more likely to work well with it? Okay, baby corn, bean shoots, some bok choy, maybe some cabbage and some carrots. Okay, and you don't need to pick all of these, just pick a select few, obviously starting with the ones that you like, but then also thinking about how there might be other ways that you can get a little bit more flavor and variety in with what you're consuming as well. So possibly you might not have had snow peas for a while, so you might pick those up at the supermarket and add that into the mix. And then, of course, we go across the list again, and now we're looking at herbs and spices. And this is the biggest thing that we want to have a look at in relation to creating more flavor and enhancing the vegetables and the protein that you've already got. So having things such as coriander, some lime leaves, or some spices such as chili, maybe a bit of fresh ginger. These are sorts of things that's going to be really interesting and make your dish really interesting and flavorsome and actually enhance your eating experience. So then, of course, we move to the next list, and the next one is the starchy carb column. And what we're looking at here is if this meal falls post-training, so in and around either before or after you train, then you're really looking at getting some form of starchy carbohydrates in there as well. So things like noodles and rice will go with your beef stir fry. And then, of course, we've got these list of other foods. So these are just bits and pieces that you might add. They're really low in terms of minimal energy. So you can definitely add them in without thinking that you're going to blow over an energy budget or anything like that. And this will just give you the other little elements that you might be missing on your plate. So say, for instance, you want to have a little bit of fats in there, and you might choose cashews to go with your beef stir fry. So honestly, guys, it doesn't have to be strict with this. And I've given you many different examples for many different proteins. And I want you guys to have a look, start getting used to cooking something different, but also remember to start with something that you love. And that's a really big key, and I can't stress that enough. So if we move down further, I've got plenty of other different options. And then, of course, as you go through the list, you can find your non-meat options with either some white fish, some tofu, or using some eggs. And of course, having a look at those vegetarian options, which if you aren't necessarily following, that's totally fine. It's just sometimes you might want to mix things up in the way of variety. So my quest or my challenge to you guys is to actually just go, well, how many of those meals can I maybe make meat-free throughout the week, just to increase my fiber content, my access to vitamins and minerals and things like that as well. So it's really nice to get your ideas around that. And of course, the Performance Cooking Workshop, it's all about doing that, is giving you the opportunity to see how easy it can be and also try something a little bit different perhaps. So remembering as well how we make our kitchen magic, we go back to those portions that are directly proportional to our hands and our needs. So when we're building recipes, remember, it doesn't have to be exact, but if you find a recipe that has exact amounts of something, if in the end when you looked at it, your protein is still roughly about your palm size, your vegetables is about your fist size, those starchy carbohydrates can sit in that cupped hand, and that thumb piece of fats is really what's going into or can visibly seen within that recipe, then it's pretty much done its job. So remember, it doesn't have to be exact. We don't have to follow a recipe to the letter. It simply needs to be a reflection of what your needs are, and remembering that your needs might be different to your husband or your partner's or your children's or your best friends or your roommates for that matter. So really make sure that if you are building into a meal, you're considerate of your own individual needs and your portions at that moment in time. And for a lot of these meals, they can be what I like to call deconstructed smorgasbords. So you can say cook your protein separately, cook your veggies and salads or separately, or have them separate, and then your starchy carbohydrate, and then add your fats at the end, or add that into cooking. And that can be totally used for different needs, different people with different needs. So all you need to think about is, what are my needs and what's my portions in terms of my hand markers, and then we move forward from there with trying to create those meals. But if we did the smorgasbord, each and every person could basically pick and choose what they would like from that, and they could definitely still ensure that they're meeting their hand portions or their hand needs. So keep that in mind. And just to pull it all together, I have given you guys an attachment full of recipes. So just a handful of recipes to get you started with some good food options, maybe some foods, like I said, that you might not have tried before, and ways in which to add those flavor enhancers into your meals as well. And this is just an example of training at different times and how your starchy carbohydrate would then sit in and around your training time, and possibly what you might choose from those recipe examples that I've given to build your day. So have a look through the recipes that we've got. Make sure you always go back to that blueprint of how to build your meals or make your kitchen magic, and remembering again that at the end of the day, your portion sizes still need to be accounted for within that. So I hope that's given you guys an example of how it's very easy to put flavor and put some flavor science into what it is that you're cooking, and get into the kitchen, get a little bit of inspiration there. And of course, we will see you all in the Performance Kitchen Workshop, where we can explain this again and get to taste and really do a practical way of explaining how simple and easy whole food nutrition can be to hit your recovery needs, see you guys perform and thrive in life, and also by default get a body composition goal. Thanks, guys.